Welcome to the next segment of our interview with military and security expert Sunil Ram, former Canadian military officer, now works with the consulting firm Alexis International. Welcome, Sunil. So we've been talking about this plan to attack Mumbai, that a year or two in the making, and then the question, why now? So why now?
Well, the obvious reason is the Obama plan, as I'm going to refer to it, the movement of Pakistani troops up to the Afghan border to seal it, because of course the larger plan that his White House is planning for is to essentially draw down in Iraq and shift those troops into Afghanistan in the hopes of some sort of military victory in Afghanistan. But to achieve that, as I've been saying for years now, you must be able to seal the Afghan-Pakistan border, because as long as the Taliban have the ability to withdraw into Pakistan, use Pakistan as a base for training and recruitment, it's an endless war in Afghanistan.
Which now they're starting to do in terms of these predator attacks and the pressure they're trying to put on Pakistan. But so now what happens after the Mumbai?
Well, the problem here is that for Obama, his plan, a critical element, as I've said earlier, was that India had to withdraw forces from Kashmir, so that Pakistan could put troops up on the Afghan border. Well, this can't happen because ultimately it doesn't matter how many American troops go into Afghanistan unless the Pakistan side is dealt with. And it now comes to the point where Obama's team has to either accept the fact that large U.S. forces have to move into the Pakistan side of the frontier, which of course creates the larger issue of sovereignty, and the Pakistanis not agreeing and could end up in direct conflict.
Could this work in a way that's actually the reverse, assuming the intentions of the people that carried out these attacks were to create a conflict to tie up Pakistani troops on the Kashmir border? I mean, in fact, given the relative restraint of India and the fact that India's threats directly against Pakistan are not very high, and they're trying to work with each other and go through a sort of due process, could in fact this actually go the other way, where actually there's even more pressure on Pakistan to do this, because India might still be willing to do this deal?
Well, I think India to some extent is, and we have to be a little pragmatic. The Pakistanis have always argued that India somehow wants to bring Pakistan back into the greater fold of India. But realistically, the Indians aren't interested in that, simply because the large Islamic population within the borders of Pakistan would skew the demographics of India. We already have about 15% of India's population as an Islamic base. Adding Pakistan would jump that dramatically, which would shift elections within India at a federal level, as well as at a provincial level within certain
But as you said,
states.
it's a good mythology in Pakistan to justify the strength of the Pakistan military.
So India itself has no interest in this, and they would be interested in continuing the thawing because, frankly, it costs India, hundreds of millions of dollars over the decades to keep this massed force in the Kashmir region. And I mean, of course, it's devastated that region economically. It is, for anybody who's ever been there, will tell you, it is possibly one of the most beautiful parts of the world. The question is, what kind of pressure will Obama's people be able to put?
Because the Zardari government, the newly elected government, seemed to have wanted to cooperate with the Americans to some extent in this. I'm not sure if it's clear what the military leadership wanted in terms of this. It sounded that, in principle, the Army was not very enthused about this.
No, and let's not forget, the civilian leadership of Pakistan, for the most part, operates as a relatively ineffective group, because ultimately they have to have the support of the military to remain in power. The history of coups in Pakistan is ample proof of that. The bottom line is it doesn't really matter what Zardari wants, and it is really ultimately what the military wants in the bigger picture.
And just again, we've said this in many interviews, so I'll say it again, no conversation from either side, Pakistan, India, or the United States, at dealing with any of the underlying problems in the tribal areas of Pakistan, an area of terrible poverty, lack of schools, lack of clean drinking water, any kind of real employment. I mean, the answers seem relatively simple, but nobody seems to want to address that.
Well, again, but that's a more question of corruption at the highest levels within all these regions. The fact is that you have a handful of elites who take all the bread and they don't share it with the people who need it. There are ample resources in Pakistan in terms of oil and gold that have been untapped to date, because the bulk of the money gets directed at the military as opposed to in development and putting in the resources required. We all know the solutions are relatively simple, but the willingness amongst the elites in this region to address those solutions are not there because they are far more interested in putting the money in their own pockets.
Well, Obama has promised a new mindset in U.S. foreign policy, although I don't think we've seen too much evidence of it. But if there's going to be a new mindset, it has to be something that starts to address the basic problems of the people of these areas. Thanks for joining us, Sunil. Thank you for joining us for this series of interviews with Sunil Ram. There are times when reality just asserts itself. In spite of the haze created by television news and entertainment, sometimes crisis rips a tear in the fabric of myth and propaganda. Now a profound economic crisis has ripped asunder the American dream itself. Millions of people losing jobs and homes. They lack proper health care and any real sense of security. Since 2001, workers' wages have fallen or remained stagnant, even though worker productivity has risen almost 33%. By 2006, the top 1% of households were receiving 23% of all pre-tax income, more than double what it was in the 1970s. It's the greatest concentration of income since 1928. As unemployment rises, we need to know why this crisis is happening and what we can do to defend ourselves. Why are wages so low? Why is the society so laden with debt? Is it in ordinary Americans' interest to have $1 trillion military budget to project power across the globe? Corporate television news won't ask these questions, let alone try to find answers. Only a truly independent news network can tackle these questions with courage and with ordinary people's interests in mind. We need a news network that's independent of corporations, governments, and political parties. We need the real news. But there won't be a real news network unless we raise substantial funds right away. The current financial crisis has hit our funding hard. Together, we do have the power to turn it around. There are already hundreds of thousands of people watching the real news every month. If everyone pitches in, we can build an internet and cable television network that will change the face of media forever. You can organize house parties, talk to friends at school and at work, send email blasts and spread the word. Distribute this video to everyone you know. Pick up the phone and call a few friends and suggest they visit therealnews.com. Invest just 10 minutes a day to ask friends and colleagues to join the campaign to create a truly independent source of internet and television news. Together, we can build this network. Just 50,000 people at $10 a month gets us to our first level of sustainability. You can help us reach this goal, and when we do, we'll move to television in millions of homes across North America. Help us reach an audience in the millions. Please contribute generously. Spread the word. Let's make the Real News television network a reality.
Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute at therealnews.com.